If anybody's got any questions, now is the time to get us new stuff in. It's springtime. It's just like, every time I look around, there's another thing we have to add. I'm back to where we used to be, where every week we would send out a newsletter that had way too many things in it, to the point where people finally said, enough, it's too much. I can't handle all this stuff coming in. So any questions? Oh, there's a hand. Go for it. I can't see
Hi,
who.
Janet, it's Carol. I
Hey,
have
Carol.
burning bushes that are now the size of small trees. You know, they look just like I've pruned them over the years to look like a multi-trunked tree. I keep them bare at the bottom. I only let them leaf out at the top, and they're at a size that I like. However, that terminal end always ends up with, a ton of little branches, like almost like fingers.
Yeah.
And that's what I have to work on every year. I looked on your website. I thought you had gone through that once. What I was planning to do, this is really a question. First of all, I'm going to do what Sue Gruba. I'm getting a reciprocating saw.
Yeah.
And then I think, should I just try to find maybe a leader in that group of fingers, if you will? What should I do? And it's all on the terminal ends.
Yeah, of course they are. The more you cut there, the more that what was branched last year branches again, and you've got even more stuff there. They do look very nice when they're trees. People mistake them for Japanese maples all the time. If you can cut rather than cutting and doing all the little cutting of cutting out and leaving just a leader here. I hope my picture's in this week. It wasn't in last week. Um, Take a couple of them and cut them down here. Take the branch back. It'll look a little bit stubby to begin with, but it'll branch out from one of the lower pieces and you'll have a little less pruning to do. So you can cut some of those branches down by probably 12 inches, whereas the others that you could sort out, and yes, you look for a leader, you try to leave them with a leader. That you might be almost at their limit. I've seen them get to where they don't have to be pruned so they don't get bushier at the tips because they've gotten to be 12 feet tall already. And that's usually about as tall as the full-size as the dwarf burning bush will get. The full-size bush gets a little more than that, but most people don't have the full-size bush. You would know if you do the branch on a full-size bush, rather than being just round with a little bit of a ridge on it, has a big wide flange. Did you ever get toys out of Cracker Jacks boxes? And when you punch the toys out, they leave little things sticking out of the thing you picked, you punch them out of. That's the full-size burning bush has that. That's very obvious. So if it's got those, it's going to get to be 15 feet tall. But if it doesn't have those, then it's only going to stop at it's going to stop at about 12 feet, maybe 10 feet. So you might be able to let it go a little bit and stop pruning it.
Okay, so if I take off that end, I can leave a stub, even though there doesn't appear to be a bud on the stub. I can leave the stub, even though the buds are a little farther down that branch.
Correct, because
Okay,
it will branch, it will bud out from where it's going to bud out. If it's already got buds formed, they might take precedence over a dormant bud, but usually the highest point is where the bud comes from.
perfect. Thank you so much.
Sure. And that's what this is all about, questions. Anne sent this picture to remind me of a Japanese maple she'd asked about a couple of years back. This Japanese maple, isn't it beautiful? It's been in a pot and been in and out of her garage over the winter for years. And she said, can I keep doing that? I said, yeah, you can. Sooner or later, starts getting a little bit difficult to keep it watered because it has too much root in a small space. So she planted it in the ground, and they had 137 inches of snow up in Leelanau County. That's up in Michigan's hand. Let me see if I'm doing this right. That's up here in the little finger. And she said, when the snow cleared, this is what it was, and will it make it? No, this tree is toast. So what happened is while this was covered with snow, um, animals ate the bark away, chewed the bark away in order to eat that moist cambium that has some nutrient in it. It's like eating the buds. And it probably was rabbits, but if there was snow all the way up to here, it could have been voles. They're called meadow mice. They're related to mice, but they're not mice. But they need to eat, and they've been eating, and you can see that the weight snapped a branch over here. No chance. Anne asked, in addition, can she then take some cuttings? Because we did talk about it, email back and forth about it already. Japanese maple is notorious for not coming very well from not taking very well from cuttings, even when you take the cuttings at the best time, which would be in July when they're just beginning to harden off. You might get 1 or 2% of your cuttings to take. So it's not real likely that you're going to get a cutting off of this one. This is a new tree time. And I've had this happen to rose trees that I've buried. I thought, oh, good, I'm going to bury this rose tree and it'll be fine. And that winter they were hungry and they moved in on it. Nurseries, when they put plants over the winter in greenhouses, will put uh, rodent poisons and traps out in order to keep this from happening to plants that are set in a nice warm place because the rodents might move in with them. Sorry, Anne.
It's
Other questions? See, what time is it?
nothing in chat.
Oh, well,
Nancy has a hand raised.
go for it, Nancy. We have just about a minute. And
Hi,
hi.
I was watching an old one of your webinars or whatever, and people were asking about why do the worms come out of the ground and they're all over the driveway and stuff when it's raining.
Yeah.
So I remembered back when I was in elementary school, our science project was to get worms from the yard. And I picked all the ones off and brought them in water. And what I was told was the worms are just like roots of plants. If there's too much water, they can't breathe in the dirt.
They come up
So
for
they
air.
climb out, they crawl out of the dirt and stay on the surface. And then they get lost while they're, on the driveway or whatever, instead of going back into the dirt.
Right. And the better drain the soil is, the less of them you see. Thank you.
Yep.
There are these things that we gardeners wonder about all the time, and nobody else even seems to notice. We notice birds sitting in the trees along the side. We notice what kind of trees they are. We notice the moon in the sky, and other people sometimes are just so focused on the other parts of life they don't see it. Everyone here has been here before and knows about using the chat to ask questions and making sure that you chat to the whole group, because it toggles our switch to just you. And when we answer, no one else can see the question or the answer and don't know what's going on. And we're not very good at keeping that straight. You can also do just what Nancy just did. Just raise your hand. It's in reactions or it's in participants. There's a place where you can raise your hand. That makes you pop to the top of our list. Steve will see it. And you can then voice your question, which is, for me anyway, it's a lot easier. I don't like chatting, typing and because I always want to read, what do you call it? I always want to edit it. Okay, Steve, you take it.
Good evening and welcome to Free4All Friday. This is our 37th edition of our little get-togethers where our gardeners are welcome.
And we want you to come celebrate growing and cultivate problem solving. That's what GardenAZ.org is all about. I'm Janet McConovich.
And I'm Stephen Nicola.
And we run the show here.
We try.
We try. And we do that because we've been writing and we've been learning about gardens as we worked in people's gardens for 40 years and writing about gardens for most of that time. And we just learn so much when we hear other situations and other plants and other perspectives on gardening. And we love to turn that around and give it out to other people. So we started the website in order to put the things we've been writing there and try to have a place where we could say, go look here, it's there, and we can continue writing new stuff. And your participation on Fridays or your participation in webinars, you help us keep learning new things. So thank you very much for being here. And tell friends, because there's a lot.
Yep.
I spent the morning, today was one of those days when work expanded to fit the available time, and I spent a whole morning today, fixing just one page where the links were broken on the website. But we need to spend more time getting the rest of our writing up there. So tell people they can come here and that'll keep us doing new things. The link to our Friday meeting is always there on the Friday page. You don't have to have an invitation. Anybody can come. If we get to the point where we have too many people for our account, we'll just change the account. So please do. Right now, it's kind of nice. It's a small enough group of people that you can bring a question in time on Friday to get it done on Saturday. The rain, I'm understanding, is probably going to stop in the middle of the day tomorrow, so things are going to jump out of the ground even more than they've jumped already. This is beautiful, Steve. Is that over by the patio, or is that over by the?
Yep. No, that's the one right next to the rock. That's why it's leaning out away from the rock.
And
You
it's
know, there's
also
a
leaning
rock to
out
the
because
left.
it's also leaning out because I took 3 chunks of it off last year and
Uh,
moved them over by the driveway, and I don't see them coming up yet. Must be a little bit warmer in that raised bed by the patio and by the rock.
Donna is asking for the whole group. Does anyone know the name of the fern all over the woods between Gaylord and Grayling in the northern Lower Peninsula?
Oh,
I thought they were bracken, but I'm not sure.
that's bracken. Yeah, and they are all over. That's one of those don't introduce
Real
that.
sandy.
Yeah, don't introduce that to an area unless you know you want it to be your only plant because it's a top dog plant, that bracken.
Yep.
And in a dry summer, it really goes down in the middle of summer. It really turns brown and does not look attractive, but it's beautiful up until then. About the only plant that I've seen that stands up to it is oh, Steve, what was that river that I dropped you off at the place where the river crossed up by Owasso? No, not Owasso.
The rifle?
Yeah, the right you were fishing the rifle and I was walking around, and there was a real sandy hill that the dogs and I were walking up and down, and the sweet fern was carrying on very well
Yeah.
with bracken, but not many other plants can make it with it.
No, ostrich fern is not the same fern as
It's bracken.
oh, Elizabeth answered too. Not the same fern as bracken. They
No, ostrich
no.
fern branches from the ground. Bracken stands up on a stalk, and then the fern comes out from there. It's quite different. Little bit taller too. Look what's coming. See the color? We actually
That
have uh,
does.
we actually have a couple of daffodils even a little further out than this already. And it doesn't matter that there's stuff out there. They come up anyway. Waiting to cut your garden down as we do here means that I now have to work around those bulbs. So rather than being able to take a whacker and just whack off the plants that I want to cut down, I'm going to have to cut individual stems, but I don't mind. I prefer the butterflies and the beneficial insects and the cover for the birds. That's what we do.
Yep. We want a wildlife garden. It's got to be wild.
Yeah. Well, if there's no questions, we're going to dive right in with deer
Nothing right now.
because we were dealing with deer down in South Carolina last week, and people have been asking about deer. So it's time to think about last year. If you can remember what they ate last year and when they started to eat it, that's probably the most important thing. We've written about deer a number of times. If you do a search on gardenatz.org for deer, you're going to get, for instance, the magazine format newsletter we call What's Up number 33, which has, if you'll see here, deer resist. Oh, Janet, don't do that. Deer resistant doesn't mean deer immune. On page 3 is where that article starts. And oh, I'm going the wrong way now. And this was in answer to a question about my holly has all been eaten, and I think it's the deer, and I didn't think deer ate holly. Well, yeah, they might not like it as much as they like other things. They might prefer yew, they might prefer hostas, they might prefer tulips, but when they're hungry, they will eat a lot of things, including, I think the DNR calls it starvation food, because they'll even eat pine, which normally they won't touch when they're starving. And you'll find deer that died of starvation with pine in their stomachs, according to the wildlife, the naturalists that I talked to. So the bottom line is that fencing them or walling them off is your best bet overall. There are other things that you can do, and you can let plants grow back at least once, not every year, year after year after year. But if they only get hit once, well, then now you can start protecting them. That holly looks terrible, doesn't it? There are shrubs and trees that don't usually get eaten. It doesn't mean they don't get buck rubbed. They don't get rubbed by antlers and often turned into something that looks a lot like that Japanese maple that we were showing you before we officially got started. But there is a list in what's coming up 33, and right now it's here on Free4All Friday number 37. Some plants that usually don't get eaten. But I will tell you that most of the plants on every deer resistant list I have seen, at one time or another, I have gotten an email or a letter from somebody saying they ate so if they're
They
hungry,
eat it.
yeah, they're
They
hungry.
at least taste it.
Oh, and that's the thing. At the Holden Arboretum east of Cleveland, which is a wonderful arboretum, they have the entire arboretum fenced with an 8 foot tall plastic netting fence. Many of you have probably seen it. We use it at some clients' houses too. But still, the deer find ways to get in. They'll shimmy under low spots where the ground dips and the fence doesn't. For instance, the gardeners go and pile rocks in those places. But when they get in, they tend to, according to the horticulturists there, go for the new plants. They haven't tried those before, and the new plants probably are higher in nitrogen content. They're a little sweeter than the plants that have been growing without a lot of fertilizer at a grower's place. So protect your new plants for sure, no matter what it is that what list they might be on or not be on. We wrote about it on What's Coming Up 88, where our point there was that what was it that we wrote about here? This is when we were able to see even first off tulips, deer candy, although we've heard people say just the opposite. I have tulips and they never touch them. The species tulips, the little tiny new ones that come up little and people think are crocuses, you'll have to get them as species tulips, Tulipa pulchella, Tulipa humulus, Tulipa daysystemon. These early species tulips don't usually get eaten. But I've also had people say that they don't eat my big tulips. I've also had people tell me that they don't eat their hostas. They appear to learn what to eat. But you can drive along the road and see things like, do I have a picture? See things like this, and people wonder what that is. And that's as tall as a deer standing on its back legs can reach. Is it a U, Steve? I think this one's a U.
Yeah, that's a U at Hidden Lake.
Yeah, and this is what we think the U's in our backyard are going to look like. We had U's planted at the front of the house when we moved in, and they were just blocking windows and being ridiculous and having to be pruned all the time. So I took them out, and they had enough root. I dragged them around back and planted them, and most of them made it, which is good because we want to let them grow and replace the big trees we have with something that's 15 feet tall. And we'll protect them until they get up high enough because we don't care if they're woody down here. In fact, their branches can look very pretty and red-brown. What we want is a block up higher. So we're only going to have to protect those U's until they get up above deer level. We did notice too that we've looking at various articles and researching deer for people, that buttercup has a very powerful irritant. It irritates the mouth. And so we wondered whether planting buttercup in among plants that you don't want hurt might make a difference. And then we realized that that was a silly thing because we have seen deer go in to a mixed bed of yellow and purple crocuses and eat just the yellow ones. They must taste best first.
Yep.
We've also seen them go in among a bed of daffodils and eat and pick out the couple of tulips that are in there. I compare it to me going into Steve's nut mix. Steve really likes nuts and raisins and dried fruit. I'll go in and pick out all the cashews. I'm very good at picking out just the cashews, and the deer do the same thing. The same thing goes if you want to get more specific. You can search deer rub. We had 9 pages that use those terms. And having thought about deer, I thought about what happened last year. And last year, the deer came through and ate the tip buds off of our little beech trees. And I don't want them to eat the tip buds out. Why did they eat the tip buds? Because they're looking for good food. This is a late spring. For us, it's a late spring. How late is it now, Steve? Is it still?
Looking back at my pictures, we're right in the middle of what we've had. Some springs later, some springs earlier. We seem almost right in the middle.
Okay, but we're not early, which means
of the last. No, we're not. We're definitely not early. We're almost a month behind early.
Okay, so we're not early, which means that there's not nice, luscious new growth coming that deer can browse. So they're going to go more for the buds. So I just took out our liquid fence is what I'm using right now, and just sprayed all the buds on those branches, because I know that they did it before, and I know that they'll walk through at 2 a.m. some morning and do it again. I use liquid fence because last year I was using plant skid, Ropel.
Plant skid.
Yeah, I switch every year.
You got some people recommend switching every time it rains almost.
Yeah, yeah. And if you're using a repellent because you're growing things that you know are going to get eaten or might get eaten, if you're using a repellent, if the label says to put it back on every 3 weeks, put it on every 3 weeks. It wears off. Today was a good day to put it on because it wasn't raining and it has enough time to dry in place before the rain starts tonight or tomorrow. So switch off when you can switch off, but do read the label because the deer are smelling it every night, and when they can't smell it anymore, you might notice I got it on my hand, Steve, so you're gonna notice that.
I don't notice from here. If I was sitting next to you like on Saturdays, maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
Susan says she knows what does eat hostas is slugs. She had 40 to 50 varieties in Clarkston and learned through the years that it was to keep slugs away later in the season, start with prevention this time of year.
That's
Do we
right.
have any slug preventative suggestions?
Yes, and we maybe 2 weeks ago they were in Free4All Friday, but they are always worth repeating. This time of year would be if we had an area here, like what we're looking at, where we had slug issues, we would take all the debris out. What you're seeing there are stems of pearly everlasting. Slugs don't eat those, but it might be phlox or something. Flip that out, rake it down, rake the mulch out, leave it so it's bare soil, and put a newspaper section that you've wetted so that it stays down. So the experts that we knew who were Jim and June Wilkins, who had thousands of hostas, probably still do. They would roll up the newspapers just like the newsboy used to throw them when I was a kid off his bicycle. Roll up a section of newspaper and put a bunch of sections into a 5-gallon bucket and let them soak up water. Lay the newspaper out flat at the beginning of the day. At the end of the day, maybe before it gets dark, turn it over and peel off the bottom piece of paper because it's going to be slugs hiding under there because that's the only place they can hide. And you need to do it now when it's bare, and you'll catch the overwintering slugs and the early hatchers before they can then lay eggs, because each of those is going to lay 15 to 30 eggs several times a year. And by July, ton of slugs. We also have, I'm pretty sure that I posted it. I'll have to figure out where I posted it. It's too bad Sonia's not here. She'd figure out it right away. We have a whole list of slug remedies that over the years have accumulated, including spraying them with a 1 to 4 concentration of ammonia in water, with vinegar in water, with traps, upside down pots. And we wrote those all up and put them in one article. And it's someplace on the website. If you're interested in that, send me an email and I'll find where I put it. And then we can post it for everybody when we send out this recording. No more questions. Look who's blooming. The Pulsatilla vulgaris, the pasque flower, windflower, prairie crocus is up and blooming. There's its last year's stems laying down, and the leaves, they're kind of ferny leaves at the end of those stems, and they cover the ground pretty well. They keep a good mulch around themselves. The flowers come up first with those beautiful, furry, mink-like ruffs around them, and then the flowers are going to come up later. The leaves are going to come up later, and you can see that they're much bigger. Kind of looks like parsley later, like a big clump of parsley. Pulsatilla vulgaris. Used to be called anemone pulsatilla. Beautiful
I
plant.
put a link up to the slug letters that were preventative.
You found it.
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm
good.
learning. I'm learning. I think it's right. I think it's the one, but anyway, it's
looks
when I
right
went
to me. Calling it slug letters would be my way of doing it.
yeah, here's the latest slug controls plus a smattering of reliable techniques is
Yeah.
the first sentence. So
Good.
that's the link to it on our website.
This might be
Or you get a PDF of it.
yes, yeah. There is a effect of walking in the garden this time of year. We want to go out and see what's going on, but our shrubs aren't leafed out. The deciduous stuff's not leafed out. And so you might feel like things are too open and you want to be alone, or you want to feel like you're not in a fishbowl and people looking in. We don't like people to try to make a fortress. We like people to think line of sight. So we'll get letters from people, for instance, in what's coming up, number 140, which is another of the magazine type issues that you download to read. And privacy for a backyard is pages 5 and 6 in this one. And this person who wrote in and started this whole thing asked about putting up a hedge. The arborvitaes aren't doing good because they're shaded. She wants to do something else. What else can she put in there? I hate it. I hate to have people think only of hedges because that ends up being a fortress type effect. We prefer to tell people that if you think line of sight, think where you sit or where you look out from that place and what it is you don't want to see. So if you don't want to see the neighbor's back window and their sitting area and their patio area back here, or you don't want to see something over here, what you need to do is think line of sight and think there's you and here's where I need a block. And I know that that's a 4-foot fence back there already. And then there's this tree going up. I need something 8 feet tall. I don't need something that I plant that's 4 feet tall to start with and I wait for it to grow. I want something bigger. I want something that's got a crown up here because your arborvitae hedge or any kind of hedge is going to be too low to block it. But something with a crown up there, like a redbud tree, they're fast. Talk to our daughter Sonia, who's now beginning to worry about the choice of a redbud tree in front of her house. They grow very quickly and they have a nice round crown. But you might find that the closer something is to you, so for instance, planting this just off the back of the house, the closer it is to you, the more quickly it blocks something higher and denser. So if you can get a friend to help you out, you can sit where you sit and have them stand in various places and hold their hands up over their head so that you can say, yes, about that tall, I need it about that tall. Or no, it needs to be taller than that. They can hold a stick up over their head, but you can figure if I plant something there, here's how much it will block. So try to think about that this time of year is where do I actually need it? I don't like looking at the neighbor's door because that's where they're going to come in and out. And you just don't want to be greeting somebody who's coming out of their back door. Their back door should be private for them, just as your sitting area should be private for you. Beech trees as hedges, that's what our beeches are. We're not supposed to have hedges in our front yards.
Yep.
We want a hedge, so we're going to pleach a beech hedge. Pleach means to put the branches together so that they graft together. So we have 4 beeches that will each reach out and graft to each other and share their root system. But nobody knows that yet. They're just little guys. They're only 5 feet tall.
Yeah, they started off real itty bitties.
Yeah, they were just
Yeah.
a little over a foot tall when they got started.
Yeah.
So our magazine issues tend to have what you're looking for, and you have to open up the magazine and look what page it's on. And if you're like me, you'll find other things that get your attention. Ants, oh, that's right, anthills, and things that you can do with ants. And so, and hopefully you don't have fire ants like they have in the South. So are there any questions?
Yeah, Marcia is asking, is it too cold to put pots of pansies outside?
Not if they're hardened off. If those pansies have been grown outside or hardened off, some of the nurseries put them outside and bring them in, and then put them outside and bring them in. And after 3 or 4 days, they're hardened off and they can leave them out. If the nursery has been leaving them outside so that the pansy is accustomed now to the cooler soil and the cooler air, yes. If you buy them from an inside place, no, you'll have to do the hardening off because it will stunt them. Being put into cold soil after being in warm soil will actually slow the roots down, and you might as well not have put them in until later.
Well, she might be talking about containers, pots of, too.
Right, if you're putting out
Pansies in containers.
Yeah, if you're putting out containers, that's another matter because all of the soil you put into the container is at whatever room. I'm assuming you're like me and you're not working at 50 degrees with wet potting mix. It just freezes your fingers. So everything starts out the same temperature, and there is an insulating layer of soil around the outside edge of the pot for the container. So if you're putting them in containers, that's another matter. But putting them in the ground, it's really too early. They're ahead of where the plants that are growing in the ground are. This is Arimaris. No, Arimaris.
Yeah.
I like saying Arimaris better.
I like it better too.
Yeah, it sounds like that song, Arimaris, 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 if I bought a new Arimaris to put in and it was twice as tall as this, I would say it is advanced over what our native, our established plant is telling us it should be. So if you buy something that is ahead of what is growing outside already, you need to harden it off. And sometimes they're so far advanced because they know that we'll buy it if it's got flowers on it. You might have to keep it as a pot plant inside until the ground, the air and the soil temperature settle a month from now.
Yep.
Oh, how come I'm missing these things so fast? I do
I-
love purple penstemons, but I don't want them to take over what am I going to do with this guy? You
Yeah.
pointed out that he was just a little one, he was one
He was one
whorl of leaves last year.
whorl last year.
Yeah, and now it's got all of this. This is all a new extension coming out here.
Yep.
And here. You can tell the older leaves, they were evergreen and they've gotten a little beat up over the winter time.
This might be a 3-year-old, you know.
Oh
Now
no,
that I'm
no,
thinking
no, no.
about it.
I didn't have him in that bed of
Oh,
time.
okay.
Years. No way. No way. Trees by mail. We would question people, do we ever order trees by mail? Yeah.
Yeah.
We order small from Forest Farm,
Little.
from Greer Gardens. I mean, we want the smallest plant we have so that we can stretch the root system out and know that it's going to take. The bigger they are, the more chance they've been transplanted at least once and the roots are root bound. So the question was, what do you think about this tree? If that's in a pot, you're going to have to release the roots because that at that height, that tree should have that much root extending in all directions from the bottom. And in this pot or whatever it's in right there,
Is it in a pot or is it bare root?
if it's bare root, and this one I looked at, I said, maybe that's bare root. If it's bare root and you can unwrap that wrap they've got around it and stretch the roots out, great. If it's in a pot,
Yes.
you're going to have to cut roots. This one, a question was also, why are the tips cut? Probably to fit in the container. But sometimes, like this cut that happened right here, growers go by the old adage of when you cut the roots, you cut the top to match. That's been debunked for, over 50 years now, because it was Shigo's group in the 70s that debunked that.
Yeah.
Still, some growers do that when they repot it and cut the roots, they cut the top too, and so it branched there. It's not going to be the prettiest structure when you do that, but this part up there, they probably cut because they couldn't bend it into the box. So yes, anybody who's got places that they bought nice small trees or good bare root trees by mail, go ahead and put it into chat. Remember that the Southeast Michigan Beekeepers Association is selling trees bare root this year. I think they have, well, no, I guess I can't remember which plant trees are there, but you go to Southeast Michigan, semba.org, and you would find a tree sale there. We used to have a tree sale by our Michigan Relief Michigan organization. I'm fearing that they aren't going to have it this year because all of the grants for tree planting coming out of the federal government were canceled. It's just the wholesale unthinking slashing of stuff is costing us in places that people just don't even realize.
Yeah. Ann mentioned she planted 2 flats of pansies last fall in the ground by her front door. They got buried under 3 foot of shoveled snow and they are up.
Yeah. See, they're in tune and they're up and probably blooming, but they're also quite low to the ground, I'll bet. Now, I'm not sure of that, but yeah, if they went in last fall and survived the winter, and with cover they do. We always had Johnny Jump Ups, the viola.
Yeah.
I've forgotten what their second name is, but the little bitty guys, and they were always blooming in January if there was a break. And then they'd hunker back down again and start again in April or May. This is Jeffersonia twin leaf, just coming up. And like many plants in the spring, when they first come out of the ground, they tend to have purples and magenta colors in them. That's a particular type of chemical that the plant makes more of that acts kind of as an antifreeze, keeps the cells from exploding. As it gets warmer, that disperses, changes, is withdrawn, and you see more of the green.
And Kristen mentions our Arbor Day Foundation also has trees.
There you go. So
Yeah.
you need to
We hope.
look up the Arbor Day Foundation for trees.
Yeah.
This is Veronica in Canada, the gray leaf Veronica. I like it because it's Veronica, which means it blooms blue, and it has a grayish leaf, and it looks really nice on the against the foliage. Big question from John. I'm not sure if you're there, John, but can I move it now? And the answer is certainly. Can you move it later? Sure. Because the time to do something in the garden is when you think of it. That was Christopher Lloyd, the wonderful gardener and author who designed the current gardens at Great Dixter. He's passed away now, but his logic and humor live on in our hearts all the time. We've talked a lot about moving plants because we've moved them at all different times of year. I think we now have moved plants in every month of the year. And
Yes.
and a couple of those we moved just because, well, we haven't moved anything in January. Let's move them.
And that's here in Michigan, not over in California or down south in South Carolina.
Yeah. And that includes things like bulbs. Move some bulbs, shift a shrub, hedge a beech this time of year. This is my bucket. You can see it's just about, I think it was maybe April 10th or 12th or so when I was moving these around. These are colchicums, fall blooming bulbs. There's daffodils in bloom, evergreen perennials, clematis. Those are the things I was dividing and moving around. Now, there are some things that you can move more easily at certain times of the year. Peonies are less brittle in the fall than in the spring. Daffodils, when I move them when they're up this far, I plant them deeper. I set them down in the pot. Whoops. I set them down in the ground, and literally they end up with just little leaves sticking around their flower, and they extend themselves up, and they're just fine. But I just put them in deeper and then the soil holds them up. But there are some plants that are even moved better when they're this time of year. Snowdrops, which you can buy as a bulb in the fall, tend to take better and come up more thicker, more vigorously if they're moved in the spring when they're in the green. So we move things around all the time. And if the plant is not pleasing you where it is, why leave it and let it displease you for that much longer? If the plant is languishing where it is, it's not going to get any better by leaving it there longer. Get it up and move it. I just talked to a neighbor today that I've been trying to get a hold of. She's on the opposite side of the canal from what we can see, but I can see her garden. And I've always wanted to talk to her. And after dropping one of the grandkids off at school today, I saw that she was out there. So I stopped and we talked. And she had just done this. She's my age, and she had just dug this apple tree out of a place that was not satisfactory, and the squirrels were jumping on it. And she moved it out here, and she moved some daffodils and crocuses with it. And see what I mean about the daffodils laying over? That part was underground before. You can put that whole thing underground. But there it was, a gardener saying, sure, I'm just going to move them now when I can. And when we move things around, if they're established plants and they've gotten to the point where, for instance, if you have to hold Sedum Autumn Joy in the sun up with a stake, that plant has gotten too big for its britches and it's gotten too weak in the center. Divide it, it's going to do much better. If the hosta has an empty spot developing in the middle of it, or the Siberian iris or the geranium, that's because that's the oldest part of the plant. The new plants are growing around the edge and competing with the oldest part. It's the weakest part and it dies out. It's time to start dividing some of these things. And I don't mind this time of year moving anything, because when the soil is warmer than the air for a good portion of the day, roots grow and the top doesn't. So these hellebores that spent the winter in pots, our plan was to drive them down with us to South Carolina, but the plan changed at the last week, and I flew down. So, well, I'm still going to take the hellebores with me. I'm going to take them down to bare root. So the leaves have gotten dry because they've been sitting in a pot, and I take them out of the pot, which I would do when I plant. What I'm about to show you, I would do when I plant them anyway. So I'm going to do them now and make them way less for me to carry through the airport in a box, and make them ready to plant. So these roots have grown to the bottom. then circled the bottom, and they're growing back up again. There are roots coming up into the new soil that's been added on top. Not what we need. So I've sawed off the bottom of that in order to loosen all those roots. And then I put my hands into the middle bottom of the pot where there were no roots and pulled outward. And does it break roots? Yes, it breaks roots. But look where they were before. Every one of these roots is trying to grow from the tip. And these roots that are all swirled together here, they have to share what? 3 drops of water? Broken apart, they each get 3 drops of water, and they grow more quickly. So I'm not worried about losing roots this time of year because they're going to grow very quickly when you put them into the soil and give them the springtime to grow. So if you can probably just barely see the outline of the pot. It's grown, most of the roots are at the bottom. And by taking that off, you release a lot of roots to grow outward rather than to grow in and compete with each other. A couple of them I couldn't even get out of the pot. They were so tight. So I just sawed the pot and all and then tipped them out of the pot after they were not so stuck. I was going to take the bottom off anyway. Might as well take it off that way. Well, and what I ended up with were these 4 hellebores. Now you might say, well, but now the roots are all shorter. The roots are going to grow. They're going to grow like 60 now. And now they've got a chance to grow outward in all directions. So I put them,
Many more roots than what was in that root bound
yeah, many
and
more.
grow out.
Sometimes some of these plants, like hellebores that are very long-lived, peonies, hydrangeas, hibiscus, butterfly bush, if you put them in the ground in that tight configuration, 4 years later, they're still in that tight configuration. They need the chance to grow outward. So they look like this. And if you look, here's the new growth coming. I've cut back the old flower stalks. And there's leaf stalks. There's a flower bud here. But here's the new leaf growth coming already and going to start growing like crazy. And the new leaf is, see the roots growing from the base of the old leaf cluster right here? That's going to be growing roots like crazy out to the side. And that's what you want to have grow. See all this? See, look at all that's ready to come. And it needs to grow its own roots out and away from the rest of it. Questions?
Anne wants to be told about rose campion. It shows up naturally in her garden. I left it up last year because it has a nice color to its leaves. But will it seed everywhere? Is it easy to remove where I don't want it?
Does the chat community want to take that one? How many people have grown rose campion and said, "Oh my gosh, it's everywhere"? If you let it go to seed, it will come up in the lawn. It grows very well in dry soil where other things don't grow. It'll occupy the lawn. It'll occupy the garden. Steve loves the color, and I like the combination of those magenta flowers against the gray leaves. There is a white form too called angel blush. That's a white flower with a pinkish red center. But we love the red one, the straight species against the gray leaves.
Yeah.
But you do have to deadhead it, and that keeps it blooming most of the summer. But if you let it drop seed, yes, it's going to be all over the place.
And once it goes to seed, then the foliage crashes down and it doesn't look so good anymore.
And Nancy,
It is relatively easy to pull, as Nancy says. It goes everywhere, but
if it's in the garden, it's easy to pull. When it's in the
in the
lawn,
lawn,
nope, it's not easy to pull. So if you've got a lawn that's not irrigated, the rose campion's going to do better. And that's okay. You can even walk on it. The kids walk on it, but it doesn't look like lawn. Here's our mystery plant again. If anybody knows what this is, no, it is not a pulmonaria, and it is not it's not oh God, I'm terrible with plants anymore. Pulmonaria.
I don't remember.
Oh, it's comfrey. It is not a comfrey. It has a leaf that looks like pulmonaria, but all green later. And we don't know. I don't know where the heck I got it. It's just there. It's a gorgeous color. I love it. But I don't know what it is. We're still figuring it out.
No, it's definitely not Virginia bluebells, and it's not an indigo.
It is related to, it's in the family with Pulmonaria and Virginia bluebells and comfrey. It's definitely got the same
Yep.
plant structure. It's in that family, but we can't find any reference to what it is. That's today, right, Steve?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's blooming ahead of the pulmonaria. So the pulmonaria is still in just leaf. It's ahead of the Virginia bluebells too.
Yes.
Yep.
I didn't notice any of our Virginia bluebells up yet.
And no problem with leaves, guys. No problem with leaves. The plants can come through just fine. And those leaves, that little loose cluster of leaves there, that's holding some heat into the soil.
Susan mentions, is it lungwort? Lungwort is one of the common names for pulmonaria.
Yeah,
So it's related, but not
but we haven't figured it out.
specific. Yeah.
We've been through so many plant encyclopedias, and people will figure it out. Sooner or later, somebody will have one in their garden, or they'll show up in an article, and I'll go, there it is. It could be a type of pulmonaria. It could, because there are a number of species. There's Pulmonaria saccharata is one of the parents of most of the ones that you have that have the splashes on the leaves. There's also Pulmonaria rubra, which has pink flowers and solid green leaves. This one could be a pulmonaria something else, and having the friends that we have means that somebody may have given it to us, somebody like Tony Resnick, and it might be one of those botanical garden rarities, and we just didn't pay attention when we got it. Want to talk a little bit about soil, because now is the time to think about, don't go ahead and move it now, but don't move it and walk on the soil if the soil is still wet. If you can squeeze a handful of soil and open your hand, poke the clod and it falls apart, you're cool. If you squeeze a handful of soil, open your hand and you can poke it and it stays together, it's still too wet and you can ruin it walking on it. It's like putting wet buckets together. If you stack your buckets, 5-gallon buckets like we do, if you put a nest of bucket into one that is wet, you're probably not going to be able to pull them apart. The pressure and the moisture causes a vacuum. If you press down on wet soil this time of year, it doesn't open back up like a sponge. So be careful. But you can fix soil. We've told you before, if you go into Ensemble Editions in What's Up, you'll have to click the main menu, What's Up, and that'll take you to a menu to the side if you've got a big screen, or at the bottom if you've got a phone or an iPad. And if you go to Ensemble Editions, there's a whole list by season, and you're looking for early spring. You click on early spring will open up, and all of the issues that we've put out are there. And you can click through them, and each one will give you a summary of what's in it, either in that magazine form that I showed you earlier, or like this, in this particular one, which is What's Up number 177. There's an article about digging and working clay, which we're not going to look at in detail right now, but it's there. Click on it and you go to it. I was working with sand last week. This is the Martha's Garden in Garden in a Making in north of Charleston, South Carolina. And we worked the soil last year, Martha and I. Her helper in the garden, lawn clipper, cut the sod away for us after we outlined where we wanted the sod removed. And then Martha brought in many bags of topsoil, and I worked through and loosened the areas where plants on our design said they needed to be planted. Now it looks like this. And for those of you who complain about pines dropping pine cones and oaks dropping their leaves, all of this brown that you see on the lawn and on the bed, that's live oak leaves being dropped this time of year as the new leaves come on. So don't complain, because these are a lot of leaves coming down at a time of year that you might not want to be out there raking. But I want to show you what we did to the soil. It started out, the native soil was probably all sand. As far down as it was yellow sand. That was too soft for the construction equipment. So they spread a layer of gravel on top of it. It looks like a thin layer here, but imagine that this is at least a foot or 18 inches of sand. They probably spread 3 or 4 inches of gravel and then drove over it, which compressed the gravel and compressed the sand below the gravel to a certain depth, depending on the size of the tires and the weight of what they were putting on it. Then, after they got done constructing the house, They spread a layer of soil, probably just an inch or a couple inches of soil, and spread sod on top of that. Or maybe they seeded it, probably sod though. And that remains that way. When we started out, Martha and I, we had the sod was taken off, but there's a little bit of soil on top of, once I put the shovel in, rock pressed tightly together, and under the rock, sand pressed tightly together. Because even sand can turn into sandstone if you press it down hard enough. The roots of all of the trees that were there before, like the big live oaks and the big pine in the backyard, the roots of those trees were growing in the native soil. And now they're trapped in there. There's not enough oxygen in there. Probably some of those roots are dying back. Some of the roots might have found places like here. There may have been an opening here and there, and the roots grew up here, but not main flare roots. What grew in that area, and it was full, above the rock layer, it was full of roots, but those are the roots of the things planted after construction. The new palm trees over to the side of the house, the Japanese maple in the back. I didn't feel bad digging those roots out. They were not the flare roots of the important trees. They were trees taking advantage of the fact that there was a little bit of loose soil that had air in it to grow where they could grow. So I dug through wherever we were putting plants. I dug through to the loose sand layer below, which took a shovel, a spade, and a fork. Spade could get a little ways in, and then the fork could get further in, wrench back on it, and move what you can move up, and leave it loose. Leave it laying jumbled up. Mulch can go on top of it, and we did that last year. I think in the fall was when we left it, Steve. Were we there at Halloween? I think we were there at Halloween. So in the late fall, we left it loosened up. In digging those beds that you saw before, which are probably about 300 square feet, maybe close to 400 square feet, I found one worm in all of the digging, and I found one grub. Digging this spring, I found a number of worms and grubs, which means that life is happening now. This area that's broken up is a place where water can get in, and microorganisms can get in, and soil animals like grubs and worms can get in and begin loosening the soil down below. So no matter what kind of soil you have, if you think in terms of getting air into it and letting water move up and down through the layers, you can improve any kind of soil. And this time of year is a good time to do it. I felt very good watching those little critters in the soil. Okay, what are we talking about here? The snowdrops are pretty much done blooming. And now they're dropping seeds they're about to drop seeds all over the place. They can be viewed as invasive in natural areas. They don't, however, according to at least one collector of Galanthus in Pennsylvania, who's a pretty knowledgeable guy, they don't persist. If the gardener goes away, the native plants in the area tend to overgrow the Galanthus. So I don't think that they're as worrisome as things like
I'm not sure if you looked at chat, but I have some Pulmonaria blooming now. Could it be Pulmonaria blue ensign, RK Michigan? I don't think it has spots on the leaves.
a lot of the pulmonarias don't, because they have the genes of Pulmonaria rubra, or they have Pulmonaria longifolia, or Pulmonaria andersonia. But this one flower does not extend itself up like the Pulmonarias do. We're just not sure. Thanks though, RK. We'll have to look up.
Priscilla questions, is the blue flower plant Lindel, Lindelofia, longiflora?
Longifolia, yeah. And no, we have longifolia in the yard, and the leaf is not the same at all.
It's Lindifolia?
Lindifolia. I'll look that one up.
Lindelofia.
Lindelifolia. I'll
Yeah.
look that one up. I have not. I've been through the encyclopedias looking and just reading all of the plants in the. Now I forgot what the name of the family is. Pulmonaria saccharata. It's the comfrey family. I've been through the whole comfrey family, and so far I haven't found it, but I don't remember reading that one, so I'll have to take a look at it. Thank you, Priscilla.
Okay. And Susan says someone gifted her mini clipper several years ago that I keep close to my kitchen sink and use for house plants, cut flowers, and I confess sometimes for trimming vegetables to throw into the soup pot. it's time to replace it. Would you make a recommendation for reliable garden tools? We have a tools webinar from way.
Yeah, we do have a tools webinar. We do recommend some things there for the little clippers, the little spring loaded spring action clippers. The florist, our local florist carries ones that are inexpensive and work really well. Fiskars has ones that work real well, but we don't have a company that we recommend for tools. It's like we used to recommend the Fiskars hand pruners, and I'm back to Falco's now because Fiskars started remanufacturing theirs, but we still like their little mini clippers.
Yeah, it all depends on your own ergonomics, how your hand works, how the tool feels in your hand. When we give tool classes and talks, we mention how important it is that it's comfortable when you hit it with your foot. It's comfortable in your hands. So there's a lot of good
This
tools available. It's just you might have to try a bunch of them.
Next week, Wednesday, we're at the Waterford Library, where we, along with a bunch of other volunteers, we maintain the beds. And when you're with a group of people like that, and there's 10 or 12 people there, you can try out each other's tools. It's better than ordering it by mail and then finding out that the weight is wrong. I like to hold it and find out how well balanced it is, whether it feels heavy in my hand.
How far open they are.
Yeah.
How far do they open? Do they open wider than your hand?
Yeah, I was telling you how expensive the Falcos are now, Steve, compared to before. They had them locked. You couldn't even
Well, they were always expensive.
Right, but you couldn't even take them off of the rack. You had to get someone to unlock them. So I had them unlock them. I said, can I take them out of the package and put them in my hand? Because I need to see if these ones for smaller hands will work for me now. And they feel okay. I'm trying those out. The last time that I went for a new spade, because my spade was prized by everybody in the crew that worked with us. They all liked to use my spade. It was sharp and it was light and it worked well, and it eventually wore out. The blade itself, the spade blade itself, got a crack in it. So we retired it, and I must have bought 9 new spades looking for the one to replace it, because I had to keep getting them and trying them to see how they worked and how they felt. It's the way that goes. This is today.
And said she got some good little clippers from an Ace for houseplant and cutting summer flowers. MK recommends Lee Valley Tools. They've used them for many years. Gene says estate sales, great place to get garden tools dirt cheap.
Dirt cheap, and sometimes, for instance, the fork that I use, the spading fork, Clarington Forge, which bought the old spear I can't even remember what their name used to be, but Clarington Forge no longer makes that style of fork. And I think that it's the best one that can be. I keep looking for another fork that has exactly that same tine. And an estate sale, they've got to be out there. They sold a lot of them. They've got to be out there, and I will look for them.
Yep.
The bloodroot. It is, I love how the leaf is curled around the flower like it's protecting itself as it comes up. I love bloodroot. Just a quick note for season 6 for those of you who are joining our webinars. It starts next a week from tomorrow with lesser known native plants for the landscape with Pierre. If you are interested in the webinars at all, or if you have subscribed, then we can send you a list of all of our of the webinars in season 6 that are described, and we include the free-for-all so that you can keep track of what the heck is going on each week. And where we're going to put them. So the Fridays are going to be in the free library that anybody can look at, but subscriber library is where the recordings of those webinars are going to be. And we also, for those who are subscribers, we have a resource page. We send you the link to the resource page. It is an invisible page on our website unless you've got that link. So if you have that link, bookmark it or write it down somewhere, because that's the place where you can go to view any of the recorded webinars in the library, 173 so far. You can find webinars by title. You can find the note-taking guides, and the link for the next webinar are always there. So do take a look at your mail because it should have come to you. We also have a sorted a sorted list of all of the webinars that are in the library already for subscribers by category. So all the design webinars are listed together, and there is a link that tells you where you can go to look for them, with the pest ones, the native plant ones, the planting webinars, the and we have a second list that has, rather than just the titles, has the descriptions too. It's a big file, but it's not paper. You can just keep it on the computer and look up the things you need to do to find out what you want to go and take a look at. And there's a calendar there to tell you where we are, because we are not always having our webinars on the first Saturday of the month. There were some speakers that we couldn't arrange for the first Saturday of the month, or some of them butted up against a holiday. So you might want to take a look at the calendar for the green dots with our webinars. Hey, Pierre, I need to email him tonight, Steve, so that we can coordinate our pictures.
Yep. No, nothing new in chat.
We heard our peepers. We were in Ann Arbor last night and heard peepers. Haven't heard them here, but we heard the spring peepers.
Yeah, I haven't heard of the toads yet, but the peepers, haven't heard them out here either, but we heard them last night.
Yep. Well, bloodroot. That one sure looks pink. And I've never really noticed when the leaves are still purple on the bloodroot. So they might lose the pink from the white flower too. Question about herbicides, about the new spruce is being advertised a lot. And people are wondering, is that something that we can check the safety on? Yes. If it's a aside, if it is a pesticide, herbicide, insecticide, miticide, rodenticide, it must by law be labeled. And please keep the laws the same way. Don't undo these laws. So the new one, spruce, you can go into spruce and you can look for the active ingredient. Spruce weed killer active ingredient. And it will tell you, spruceit.com, sodium lauryl sulfate. Now you can copy that name and say, what's the LD50 of sodium lauryl sulfate? 1,200 milligrams per kilogram orally. Remember that we looked at Dr. Doom, that's copper, and it was a 5,000 milligrams per kilogram, and it took a lot more of that copper to kill test animals than it did this one. So it does have a lethal dose number on it. And it does have a safety data sheet that you can look up to see just what does that mean? Does that mean that it's my eyes and my skin? What is it that's going to happen? And you can also put in, here's a new word for you, new phrase for you to know. It's called mode of action. Some pesticides work by being absorbed and changing the way that food moves through an organism. Some work by attacking the nervous system. Mode of action on sodium lauryl sulfate is that it lowers surface tension and helps water and oil mix. It is a soap. Soap is a herbicide in that it breaks down the covering of the leaf and causes the leaf to die. It does not cause the root to die. It's what's called a burn down chemical. The story that probably tells best how well soaps work or don't work and how much attention a gardener needs to pay is our daughter Sonia's friend Erin, who called her up and said, I'm looking at this bottle of weed killer that I just bought, and I think I just paid $30 for vinegar. And yes, we're often paying money for soap. The drug bank listing indicates that sodium lauryl sulfate is used as a wetting agent, a detergent in cosmetics, in pharmaceuticals, and in toothpaste. It's a soap. So yes, you can find that same information about any of those.
Yeah. Sue Gruber has a comment about with soil compaction. When we put an addition on our house 20 years ago, they had 12 inches of shredded twigs, leaves, etc., dropped off from a pruning company. The trucks and the heavy equipment could only drive where we laid that. Plenty of room for them. When the project was complete, she raked the yard, moved everything around in the yard. We did not have any compaction at all. The major bonus was that there was no mud from the trucks driving onto our street, and happy neighbors.
That's great. That's a good testimonial to what the construction studies in California showed that 8 inches deep of mulch can take a dozen passes of heavy equipment without compacting the soil beneath. Our only problem with getting that is that it's a lot of stuff to get. And you have to convince them to not drive with the delivery truck to the far end. You have to have them dump it and then drive on it. Dump more and
Dump it,
drive on it.
drive on it. Yep.
Otherwise, they compact it to start with. Good testimonial, Sue. Thank you very much. Yeah, that is our plan for our house. We have a septic field in the front yard, and eventually that septic field is going to need to be redone. And our gardens, we have 20 feet or so deep of gardens at the road edge. But everything in those gardens, we know can be cut to the ground. And then we will put a layer of probably a tarp and then our mulch on top of it and make sure that they drive in and out that way so that we can maintain the garden.
Yes, indeed.
Oops, we missed one.
Oh, missed a couple.
Yeah, we were in a hurry today. Everything kept happening. The best steak is there before the fall in spring. Put your stakes in. That same article that had the same issue of our newsletter that had the clay soil where it had information about stakes. And if you just dial down on the page, scroll down on the page, you'll find stake, and you click that, and it'll take you to a separate article about stakes. We have some sculptures that we had made that we use. That one is a great one to hold up a peony, for instance, or the blue globe thistle. But we use a lot of grow through supports, and if you put them now, and if you can make a sculpture and leave it there all year, you don't even have to worry about put them now while the peony is small. Let the plant grow through them. It took only 3 weeks for this blue globe thistle to get up to that ring, and one ring wasn't enough. There are actually 3 rings overlapped in there because it's a big plant. We make a lot of things out of the sticks that we're cutting out of stuff. I like how Rose of Sharon looks and it's very bendable, so you can bend it and twist it. And this is a peony support. I have found that some of them, though, are more likely than others to sprout roots if you stick them in the ground. And Rose of Sharon is one that waits until August. It'll fool you, and you think, "Oh, good, this one worked really well." And then about the end of July, you'll find out that they've rooted and are starting to grow around the peony. Burning bush has those nice twigs that Carol was talking about on her burning bush where it branches out at the top. So I've cut off a section to let it grow back, and I've stuck it in the ground for those pieces up there to act like crutches and hold. There's a peony going to come up in there. So don't throw things out if you can use them as stakes, because right now nobody notices another bare branch in the ground. It just looks like a bush that hasn't leafed out. And by the time anybody thinks to question you on why you've got some sticks in the yard, a plant has grown up over them.
It's 8 o'clock.
Okay. This is a testament to our next webinar person, our next webinar speaker, Pierre Benerup. This is green and gold, our native Chrysogonum virginianum. It's a good ground cover, yellow flowers early in the year and then off and on through the summer. This is the straight species, Chrysogonum virginianum. This, growing right next to it, is Chrysogonum virginianum Pierre Benerup. It was named for Pierre by one of the other wonderful plant breeders in the world. You'll note there's no difference except variety. It has a bigger leaf, a greener leaf. It's a very vigorous plant. It's grown twice as much as the others have grown. So
Yeah.
there are differences, and someone paid homage to how wonderful Pierre is, because he's just a wonderful, very knowledgeable, very helpful man. They named a great plant after him. And watch for the bees this time of year. Honeybee on the squill, or carrying blue pollen around because the squill is blooming.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll end this now, unless there are if there are other questions.
No, nothing's come into chat.
Okay, I'll make sure I look through chat just to see if there's anything that I might want to comment on. But send us an email if you've got questions. We have a lot more to come for next week. This is that time of year when it's busy as all get out, but that's part of the fun. So that's all for Free for All Friday today. We're glad you came and visited us. We'll start next Saturday. We'll start our first webinar of season 6. And that means we will not have a Free for All Friday next Friday evening. So the next time we'll see you here for Free for All Friday is April 18th. please consider joining us for the webinar if you haven't already. They're a lot of fun. And it's on the weekend when you can be getting
All
ready
right.
to go out.
Thank you all. Have a great evening and a nice weekend.
Yep.
Ta-ta for now.